Well, it's getting close to time for us to make admissions decisions for the students that applied for autumn quarter 2024, and it's a very exciting time and stressful time for students, and so we decided to try to answer some questions that students and families typically have this time of year. If it feels like admissions at the University of Washington has gotten more competitive, that's because it has, unfortunately. And the reason for that is because we've received more and more applications over time, and our ability to admit and enroll students hasn't changed that much over time. So for the incoming class of fall 2024, for example, we received about 70,000 applications. And we'll enroll a little over 7,000 students. Now, it's not quite as scary as that sounds, especially for Washington residents. First of all, we need to make more offers than we have space because not everybody enrolls. Also, Washington residents only compete with other Washington residents. So out of 70,000 applications, only about 16,000 of those applications were from Washington residents. And out of our class of about 7,000, about 2/3 of that class will be made up of Washington residents. So over time, it has gotten more competitive, but it's gotten much more competitive for out-of-state students. We're often asked, couldn't we take more in-state students and fewer out-of-state students? And actually, without the out-of-state students, we would not be able to enroll as many in-state students. Out-of-state students pay considerably more tuition than in-state students, and they allow us to enroll more in-state students than we would otherwise. Also, out-of-state students are a really important part of our student body. We're a world-class university. This is a global economy. Washington residents benefit by living with and studying with students from around the country and around the world. We're often asked who reviews applications and how our application review process works. Well, our application review staff is made up in part of our staff, our admissions counselors, for example. However, with so many applications, we need to hire additional staff to help out. And we hire a really great staff, and they go through an extensive training process, and then they review the applications. They review every single application. And in fact, we prioritize Washington resident applications so much, Washington resident applications are read twice by 2 different readers. For our application review, we're considering everything in an application. For the academic part of our review, we're considering the courses that a student has taken, how well they're doing in those courses, how well they're doing over time in those courses, and if they're continuing to challenge themselves in their senior year. And for the personal aspects of the review, we're considering the activities that a student is involved in, and we read the personal statements that a student has written. With the recent Supreme Court case that banned affirmative action in admissions, people sometimes ask if that changes anything at the University of Washington. And actually, it doesn't change anything for admissions at the University of Washington because in the state of Washington, affirmative action was banned in 1998 from the ballot initiative, Initiative 200. We're sometimes asked why it seems like some students with lower grades are admitted and sometimes some students with higher grades are not. Well, that can happen. It can happen for a few different reasons. One reason can be that we don't consider just grades in the review of applications. We also consider the courses that a student is taking and how they're doing over time. Some of our majors, some years have more capacity than others, so there can be some slight differences in how we admit students from one year to the next to certain majors. Some students have some socioeconomic barriers to education, and that is taken into consideration too. When we release decisions, some students are invited to a wait list, and people sometimes ask us how the wait list works. Well, we have a wait list in case we are able to admit more students after the deadline passes for students who were initially offered admission. So this year they have until June 1st to let us know if they want to accept our offer. After June 1st, we will look to see if we still have room to admit more students. And if we do, we'll admit some students off the wait list. And if not, we'll close the wait list. And we will admit as many students as we can if there is space.